Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Last week we had really very good discussion about really very important topic, which is really privacy, and we were the surah is bringing that issue as part of as one of the measures that the community has to observe and comply with in order really to reduce the chances for Al-Fahisha to occur. And again, that is consistent with what we have been talking about, how important is to pay attention to the environment, how you can strengthen the environment so that it will not become a conducive, to these reprehensible, immoral practices in the society. And we said that, just to summarize it quickly, that the idea is to have for the community to understand the boundaries between what is public and what is really private. Okay? And many times these borders may be a little bit, they become fuzzy, vague, okay? And I think four things really came out from that discussion, like that the idea of a privacy should not be limited to the general population, to the ruled, but also to the rulers. In other words, they cannot be spying on their citizens, okay, because they are infringing on their own really privacy. Okay, so it applies to the government and to its agencies the same way it applies really like to the general population. And I think this is very important, and we talked about how important for governments really like to balance between the privacy of their citizens and at the same time the safety and the security, because all these are done under that banner, but there is always a chance to be exploited, okay? And so someone has really to be keeping that checking, okay? Check and balance, okay? And to have, it could be the press sometimes plays a major role in keeping that really balance, or alerting the people to the importance, okay, of their alert them to their own rights, that this is part of their right to not to be spied on, okay, to respect their privacy. And then we expanded really on that topic to include not only the regular older, if you like, media. Again, the context when Quran was revealed. I mean, the space, if you like, was really limited, like to the houses. I mean, like, and how they have to deal with each other as they visit each other and go into each other's really homes. But today we have another really issue related to privacy, which in the digital age. Okay, so we talked about all the social media and how one has to be very careful, because the moment you get into it, all the information will become really available to everybody. So one has really to be careful again to how to keep really that privacy protected, and not to let anybody to exploit it in one way or another, okay, to And that definitely becomes a even stronger infringement on the privacy of the citizens. The other issue that also I think came out from the discussion. Now, we are always really like take the issue from the negative sense. Okay, privacy means, okay, don't spy, don't infringe on the privacy of others, especially in their homes. This is should be the place where you feel free, I mean, to do, okay, whatever you want, okay, and as long as you are not hurting yourself or hurting your, but you don't want like all the world to know really about it. But also, so if this is really the objective, okay, and lately people have been talking a lot, especially scholars, okay, about maqasid al-sharia. I mean the whole the objectives of the, if you like, of the revelation, okay. I mean, and Quran is very meticulous, I mean, about that it's things are not said, okay, in vacuum or without any objective, okay, behind really these instructions, okay. But what happened, like, we always take the look at the objectives in terms of what it's going to prevent. But what I am trying to tell you today, we need also to look on the positive sense, meaning like what really these instructions are telling us to do, not only what to prevent, how to be really proactive in taking actions. So if we are talking about privacy, what about these people that are really have no homes to have their own privacy? Basically the homeless. Okay, so you see where, so I am taking these verses also like to alert us to the importance to provide that privacy. Not only to prevent it from being infringed upon, but also how you can, because you walk on the street and you see these people like, unfortunately, like laying down on the street and no privacy whatsoever. So don't you see with me that this is really also a call, like to look at that problem and try to solve it? Okay, like based on, okay, how to provide a shelter, a home, affordable housing becomes really an important, could be one of the measures to be taken in order to solve these problems, so that people will not, so some people will have that privacy and others do not. How we can provide our citizens with equal opportunity, okay, and equality, if you like, of conditions, okay, so that no one will be seen of having less than what others really may have. Make sense to you? So I think it is a call for all of us to start thinking also in the positive sense. Not only what we want, I want to, the negative things that I need to prevent, but what are the good things that I can bring out of this paragraph that we were discussing about. So يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تدخلوا بيوتا غير بيوتكم. It's important. So you are talking about like how you want to the house of others, but what about these people who don't have houses or a place to shelter them? And we said that Muhammad ﷺ was really very well known about taking care of the homeless, because of this large number of people who were poor, who came to Medina. They do not have really connections, they don't have relatives, they don't have resources. And so Muhammad ﷺ made a shelter for them beside his own residence. Modest, very modest residence. And whoever had a chance to visit the Prophet's mosque, and you see where Muhammad ﷺ used to reside, it's really, really very modest. Although he was really the leader, one of the world's really like rich. If you calculate what Muhammad ﷺ had in terms of resources, he would be among the richest. But where did all these resources were spent? Not on himself or in his home family. Even when Ali, his cousin and his son-in-law and his daughter Fatima asked for a servant, and there is nothing wrong about it. But for the house of a prophecy, this is a luxury. Although they were Ali and Fatima, in fact, she was chronically ill. Fatima, she was frail, okay, and she needed really help. But the situation, they understood it. The Prophet did not say, no, don't have it, but he said something to them. They immediately get the message that this is not for us. To keep the focus on higher objectives in life, especially for that house, because that should continue to be the beacon for humanity. And taking care of the homeless and the poor and the needy, Ahlul Suffa, okay, remained a legacy in the house of prophecy, fi Bayt al-Nubuwwah. It's very interesting and very important. Okay, so I see it in these verses how important is really like to provide the shelter for it. There should be no one, and you can measure the advancement of any country. This is one of the measures. Do you have slums in your city? Do you have people sleeping under bridges or beside the museums or in the parks or whatever? I always really see this irony. One time I was visiting San Francisco, and I took a tour. And one of the major really places they take you to see is the symphony. It's a huge really like place, really, at least from outside. It's very beautiful. I'm sure it is even more beautiful on the inside. Have you been like, you have seen
pictures?
Yeah, but it's a very beautiful place. But you look down and you see it all surrounded by homeless people laying down. Because the weather in San Francisco is very beautiful, so people can. This is the best place. Like if you want to be outside, okay. But it's really an irony. Like you can see the contrast. The fourth thing I will leave it to Sister Arshia too, because last time you did not have chance to talk about the safe space, especially what is happening among our younger generation. I think this is very important to share with what you wanted to share with us last time about what is really happening. And again, we can look at it from the perspective of the safe space.
I was just telling him that I was late last time when I was coming because I received a call of a sister who had committed suicide in Morton Grove. She was 17 years old and she hung herself in the park. So we were just talking about what's going on in the community. The rate of suicide actually in Muslims is going up higher than it's been, or at least we're seeing it now. So we were just talking about the implications. I think the brother was talking about privacy or being heard. Apparently the sister had a level of depression. The response of her parents was to get her married. She stayed married for a year. She divorced. She couldn't handle the marriage. She divorced and then she killed herself. So we were just talking about this stuff is not happening to other people anymore. It's happening to us. And if it's happening in our own backyard, the question again is, what's the level of responsibility that we hold as a community to answer or to provide some sort of safety or space or opportunities of conversation, or how are we changing the way we're thinking about situations? Is it just it's happening to other people so it doesn't matter, or what will it take? So that's essentially what I was.
So if we are really talking about like not only the physical safety and security, but also the psychological. Okay, the same way sometimes we talk about the hunger, the physical hunger, but also there is also psychological hunger. Okay, and so how we need really like to provide, okay, or how should we meet these really needs? So not, yes, building a house, okay, is important, okay, again to provide tranquility, safety, security, privacy, okay, but what about also if you are in that space, physical space, but the psychological space is narrower and really like what do you call it, like suffocating, choking. Okay, so don't you see it also as part of that? Okay, so we need really to start really like thinking broader, okay, in view of what you are basically in the view of the challenges that you are facing in your time and the space. You see, in the time and the space of Muhammad ﷺ and his companions, I mean, these issues, I mean, it's very well known, I mean, that these diseases appear more in high culture, okay, societies, and okay, when they reach high culture and civilization, they start to see all these issues, okay. But I mean, now we are living in such a situation, okay, and we are being challenged by these issues, and if we do not pay attention to them in terms of prevention, okay, then I mean this is the result, okay. So
and it's definitely not the only case. Like,
There's
so many
yes.
going on, but this is, again, it's in our own backyard. This is in our home. These are in our communities, so definitely.
So really, what is really needed from your perspective, from your, I mean, like, but because people will come to you and say, okay, I mean, how before we reach that level, how we can prevent, I mean, these tragedies, because.
What you know about suicide is that usually a person who is hopeless and helpless, like those are the two things that we assess for. Mm-hmm. So if a person is feeling hopeless and helpless, and as Islam dictates, those two qualities don't really have a space if you follow the religion and if you have a community that follows the religion. And so again, you've brought it to our attention, like how is this book actually serving us? So many of us read the book, but then still provide hopeless and helpless environments for our families, our friends, our communities, our sisters, our brothers. You know, children don't feel, or I mean, adults don't feel, women don't feel, men don't feel heard. And what are strategies? I mean, you're always talking about it. What is, so if she was to feel like she's saying, I don't feel well, and the response is dismissive, and the reaction is marriage, and probably the marriage is someone who she didn't know was an arranged marriage. So what does that mean when you grow up here and people are telling you there's freedom of rights and you matter and you're human and you're beautiful, and then there's another cultural wave that says, no, I have rights over you, you should be doing what I say, you are not that beautiful, so don't you dare think you're going to get something. You know, it's like it's the approach that we communicate with our own children, our own selves.
Suicide is a plea for help. The person doesn't actually want to die. It's a plea for someone helping.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are attempted suicides. Actual suicides, they do want to die.
Well, they have been successful. Men are more successful than women because of their choices of how they choose to kill themselves. But one of the precursors is isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at, I had a program with the Initiative for Islamic Medicine for Women and Mammography, we had small group discussions. So many of the women felt isolated because they were at home all the time. So they come here to another country, and then they're within their home and they're homemakers. So they don't ever get out, so they don't ever connect.
Mhm.
So now that puts them at risk. So if they have someone that's unhappy, like an unhappy marriage, they have nowhere
To go.
for help. So they turn inward. That's what
Mhm.
depression is anger turned inward.
Yeah.
So how do you solve that problem? You have groups where you connect to women, where you can get together and talk confidentially about what's going on and what you can do. So I think that's a gap.
Oh, yeah,
within the
yeah.
The additional layer to that is even with the groups, people are not.
Exactly.
I've seen a lot of young kids, doctors' kids, for instance, but they give you some signs.
Mhm.
There's something wrong.
Mhm.
Then it's like too busy. It's kind of stigma to say somebody has got a depression or something, take it to the psychiatrist.
Mhm.
Even in this country, people, if we talk about the psychiatrist, say, no, I'm going to be all
The
right.
stigma.
Yeah.
Just go
Yeah,
along
there's a
with
big
it.
stigma.
Teaching,
Yeah.
educate people that it's
Yeah,
not a
one-
moral issue.
yeah.
It's not something you can
Mm.
will away.
You have to recognize it. If you don't, then this is what happened. Then you look backwards. And you think,
Yeah.
he had all this time, he didn't want to talk to anybody, he was on his own. And one day he was on.
Again, I mean,
They're too busy to.
yeah, since we are
People
talking,
choosing to
I mean,
hang themselves now.
yeah.
I mean, again, it's violent. Like you were saying before, it would be like cut your slit or take medicine. These women are hanging themselves. These children are hanging themselves. There's other cases right now in the news of bullying, cyberbullying.
Mhm.
Like the kids are literally hanging
Yes, yes,
themselves.
yes. So in other words, I mean, again, if you look at it, it has really to do with privacy and how whether it is the physical versus and the psychological area at the same time. But what I want to really to emphasize to the group, this is very important, my dear brothers, because this is a very interesting phenomena that is very difficult even to recognize. And Durkheim was really the first to recognize it. And I really recommend reading his book, Suicide, even if you are not in the medical field, okay? But really it is a very interesting book in terms of approach. And he was the first to recognize that although suicide is an individual tragedy, because very rare to see, in the history of humanity, very rare to see groups committing suicide at the same time. So do not cluster. The cases of suicide do not cluster. They don't represent an outbreak. Okay, it's always sporadic. Individuals committing it. But he said, although it is an individual tragedy, it is determined socially. So it is a social phenomenon manifesting itself at the level of the individual. Very important.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It's not an easy thing to recognize because here the individual and the community form a very good synthesis. Okay, very difficult to see it. So what he said, it is it manifests itself at the individual level, but it is determined socially. What you told us, both of you, okay, that if we do not pay attention what is happening socially, we are not going really to solve the problem or prevent suicide, although it is happening at the individual level. So I think that's one of the really good things that came out from the discussion of last week. Okay, and
I mean, I think your mandate has always been that the Quran should create a healthy environment, and that's what we don't have.
in fact, Quran described itself as shifa,
But that's what I'm saying.
healing of all your social issues. Okay. It's not going to solve. I will not ask my patient who has a heart problem to go and read Quran to get really better. Is that right? But in conjunction with, but really it's mostly we are talking about healing of social really problems in particular. So this is where, it's, in other words, this is its mission. But if we don't approach it in that sense, okay, or limited it to a specific context, okay, because Quran is telling us, I am giving you an example. You see, it's not limited to that example, but to build on that example and expand. I'm sure there are other things that may come out of this. Noor, brother Noor.
Yeah, I want to make a comment.
Yeah.
You know, suicide is not limited to the impoverished, the poor, and the downtrodden.
No.
You know, we read about the CEOs, very
Yes.
wealthy.
Yes.
Kill himself.
Yes,
Because
yes,
something
yes.
happened in the corporate to save his face, he just killed himself. To my own analysis, I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor or anything like that, but I strongly feel that faith, our belief in Allah, and I mean really belief with understanding, is almost a guarantor against that kind of problems. Because depression, if anybody, take the examples of Ibrahim al-Islam and his wife, when he left her in the desert. That was suicidal, right? So he knew that there was no possibility of her surviving with a little infant. And she didn't kill herself because they had one thing that was going for them both, is the absolute faith, unshakable faith in Allah.
And again, this is really consistent what we were saying before, from the beginning of the discussion of the surah. Unless we really concentrate on the individual, meaning strengthening the individual from inside. Right. So what you were talking about Hajar, like she believed that she has inside her every possibility to overcome the challenges. Okay, and this is a very good model for all of us. And Quran used it, okay, to show that you are able to build a city in a place that is hopeless to build a city. It's really in a valley without life. في واد غير ذي زرع, surrounded by barren mountains, surrounded by the desert. Who would really expect water to come out from a valley of that nature? Look at it, Google it, and see where Mecca is. But Quran is saying from that place, you can establish life, because it is all inside you. Okay, but at the same time, we should not forget about the cleanliness of the environment. We should not and cleanliness not only physical again, okay, to be healthy psychologically also, not only physically. Okay, I understand it physically, how it to prevent physical diseases. Okay, in this country, most of the diseases were eradicated just by sanitation, by having like clean water, clean food. It's enough to prevent salmonella and diseases, and it's just by having a clean environment. But again, let us expand it to the psychological also cleanliness, if you like. Okay, how you can strengthen that environment, okay, psychologically, not only physically. So both. I don't want to focus on one and forget the other. Oh, you see what I mean? Like, yes, each individual, okay, has to be strengthened from inside, and this is what you work on. But at the same time, don't forget the environment. Yeah, that it is in the first place determined socially. This particular problem. Yes. It's again. I mean, it's determined socially.
See, that problem, if that example wouldn't help a depressed person though. because their response back to you would be that God intervened, and what if her son died, and what if she was in the desert for years? Like, so their mind is in that space. So that's why this is important, is to
complete
build
the equation.
repertoire, because people who are hopeless, she was hopeful, but she still was desperate, and she was still running, and she was still crying. Like that, there's so many different examples in that story. But for someone who is feeling hopeless,
No,
I
but
mean,
the
it's like
hopeless will
love.
come from the lack of faith or iman. No?
Well, I mean,
Not
there's-
necessarily.
You can say that
No,
from
not
the, you
necessarily.
can say that from the top, but if you've experienced years and years of
Yeah.
no resource or no support, where is Allah's light? Where, I mean, that's the example that people will say, well, Allah responded to prophets. He's not responding to me because of the time frame, but the environment, everything like this.
Why we are focusing on the faith of that individual and forgetting about the faith of the people around her? Does the faith, your faith as part of the community, okay, didn't dictate on you to seek help, okay, for that particular individual? And in fact, even in the days of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this issue was raised. Okay, like, okay, why I have to pay or to help somebody in charity, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take care of them. So they want to absolve themselves. I don't want this to become a reason to absolve us from our responsibility and put it all on. That is the change that Islam made, okay, that put the onus for change on the human being. And we should really be happy about it.
When we're assessing someone for a spiritual crisis, for example, in hospice, we ask them, what is your source of strength?
Yes.
Most people will say, or family, even will say God, their belief, their faith.
Mhm.
But where do you get to that faith? This is strength of your community. You have to
Exactly.
educate and you teach and you model that
Yes.
behavior.
Yes.
But those are the two strongest things for people who are resilient.
Mhm.
And so those are the things that you need to focus on.
Yeah.
To lift up a whole.
Exactly. But I don't want people to take advantage of this, exploit it to absolve themselves from their responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay? At the same time, you are talking about the faith of that individual who is in the eye of the crisis. Okay, should not really absolve the people who around him and like standing by and like waiting what was going to happen and not intervening in one way or another. Give you another example, like what take this particular, principle, if you like, that suicide is an individual tragedy determined socially. So what will happen like sometimes when they cut on the resources and we see increase in like the psychological diseases and definitely eventually leading to suicide. So what we are doing here, okay, we are forgetting that the principle. What you are preventing these agencies, these foundations, groups to take care of these individuals before they if you cut your resources, as if you are allowing these tragedies really to occur again. You see what I mean? Like,
I see what you're saying. And I also want to just defend the fact that sometimes a family can do everything right, and there's a mental health issue that's diagnosed. That was it, and there was nothing they could do. It doesn't absolve them from trying, from setting the stage where you can.
Yes.
And from a social perspective, if you have a cluster of people with one issue, and you're trying to change that, if you reach the edge of that cluster, you can pull them all in. In other words, if you have a group of teenagers who are at risk, and you target the leaders in that cluster of individuals, you can pull them all into a healthy behavior. And conversely, they can all pull the ones who are doing well to a bad way. So
but all these really require resources.
About
Is that
paying
right?
attention.
Yeah.
Paying attention and
I mean, you can have like sometimes a good idea, but if you don't have the resources to implement it, okay, it's as if you are refuting your purpose. Okay, so again, I mean, I'm emphasizing, okay, the role and the responsibility of the society in procuring that psychological or the clean psychological space, if you like, okay, or safe psychological space for yes.
During the Prophet's time, were there any incidents of suicidal attempts?
Not to my knowledge. I think socially will be very unlikely to see that in cultures of in societies of low culture. Usually you tend to see these things become more prevalent, and as the societies move to high culture, when they have all these material things and that becomes really a stress for them, rather than really like to give them really peace of mind.
Maslow's hierarchy, because you're talking about psychological. You
High
have to
expectations
meet
from
the basic.
Exactly.
These are people who are already at a level up from that.
Exactly. So they are focusing on how to keep them basically alive. I mean, like physically.
Physically. So
So
when you're worried about that,
the
that's not.
physical hunger is more
It's a high
important.
expectation for the young.
Yeah. You wanted to say something? Oh, okay. All right. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think with all due respect to the conversation is very relevant. So I think in my mind to also bring in the people, the CEOs that commit suicide, there is a big discrepancy between expectations and performance at that time, and that would make people like get a way out by committing suicide. Even they are on top, but they are perceiving they have failed miserably at that point, so they commit suicide. There's also part of the depression part of it, and about the example, I think in the Bukhari, clearly at a certain point, which is not refuted, that it was mentioned that the Prophet has been in a situation, as we know, when been like almost 2 years that there was nothing that has been communicated by wahy to him. And that's when came. So that time that was very stressful for the Prophet, was very desperate. If you are connecting to God and then you are out, you cannot figure out what's going on, and that was a very stressful time for the Prophet. So it's
It's stressful, yeah. I mean, stress has been there. I mean, with so many things.
And mentioned something about the Prophet thinking of committing suicide.
No, I don't think. I mean, this is.
But it's fine. I'm just saying, it's the expectations that you are, and it's like in Japan, the Prime Minister committed suicide because expectation were in the miserable failure. It doesn't have to be simmering. In many cases, it can be just like,
Yeah, that culture, that's
Yeah.
a cultural thing. That is
But that's
acceptable right in that culture to deal with issues like that.
or his only way out. He doesn't cannot
Safe base.
Yeah, same that. So it has different pieces of it. Sometimes it's just impulsive. Sometimes it simmers for a long time.
And don't forget also, sometimes, the affluence, okay, becomes like a source, meaning that, okay, thinking that this will really solve or meet my needs, but in fact they are responding to the physical needs, but these are not going really to meet their psychological needs, and so that would really become a reason, okay, why we see it like among sometimes even people who have everything, and why they are really like thinking this way.
Well, statistically speaking, the highest incidence of suicide in Europe is in the northern areas where
Everything is available.
They are psychologically.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
So in other words, really like we have to think about this psychological hunger the same way we really think about the physical hunger, okay, and what are really the needs.
You're talking again about society, though.
Yes.
And those psychological expectations are created because there's an expectation in society, and people feel like they're not able to meet them. Like we were saying in Chinese culture, it's like, it's a very clean, they'd rather you die than have a mess.
Right.
You know, so then go ahead and die if that's how you want to deal with it, so.
But again, that brings down to just a couple points, that wherever the society or individual is devoid of the faith that I'm talking about, because Allah says that, call me and I'll respond. Then Allah says, فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. If you don't believe those, then really you have no faith. And conversely, who has those beliefs on the statements, how can he take his or her life? Because Allah is the grantor of life and death.
Brother Noor, today we understand depression as a disease like diabetes, like hypertension, but the point is, ask for help. Okay,
Yes,
but if you are asking for help and you are not being helped,
Help is not coming.
okay, as help is not coming, that is the problem. This is why I am saying that we need to ask, to balance the equation, okay?
Yeah,
Not only focus on, what about the faith of the people around, okay? Leave that individual. So we need to understand that psychological space the same way we understand the physical space. The privacy, okay, is not only limited, again, to the physical space, but also to the psyche. And this is why we brought that idea, okay, as can be inferred from that particular, although it is really focusing on homes and everything, but also how we can make our homes safe psychologically.
Yeah.
Many times, because we are thinking differently, in a different plane, thinking that, if I tell my kid to pray and do this and that, they will be fine. It's not enough. There are other things that need to be. If they are hungry, if you pray, you will survive. It's not going to survive. Yes.
So one point that we talked about last time, which is the difference in perception about privacy between cultures. So where we come from, we have a certain understanding of what privacy is. However, the community, not the community, but the society here has a different take on it. For example, do we like intrude on teenagers' life to protect them from committing suicide? Is that like how that fits in the idea of privacy and how to manage it from a perspective of a society here that kind of raise privacy or personal privacy at the level, and we maybe have a different way, sometimes higher and sometimes lower. How to kind of bridge that? So respecting person privacy is ultimate, but do we kind of intrude on a teenager to prevent them from committing suicide?
Again, we don't really need to go to that step, okay, and forget about really other things that really need to be really done, okay. It's re-establishing relationships, okay, and because nobody will be open to you unless they trust you, okay. But if that is missing, there will be no way. And you will be making it worse by this intrusion. Yes.
We don't think that we should have the definition of privacy. What is privacy? Because if the word definition is so huge, if you don't define and set the boundaries of the privacy, a child is just like your question about the teenager. If we said that everything what is doing is a private, then you cannot help him or cannot be absorbed in the society. It will be contagious for the other teenagers. So we have to define the boundaries of privacy.
Yeah.
What is privacy and what is the disease?
Yeah. And again, as we said, these boundaries may become very, very fuzzy. so these boundaries need to be also negotiated. Okay, I mean, again, like about the relationship between parents and the children. Okay, doesn't have to be like, and I mean, it can be negotiated. Okay, I mean, even okay, I am a father, but I cannot go into the room of my daughters without, for example, knocking on the door. Okay, or even my wife or my kids. Okay, so there's some form of, but we are really talking more about like, okay, because sometimes really like things happen because really the relationship is not really like healthy. Okay, but what I'm saying, like in these situations you need to re-establish that relationship and build that level of trust, so that kid, okay, boy or a girl, can really open. If the mother is closer, let her do that job. If you are closer as a man, do it. I mean, so but it has to be really negotiated, okay? And because we cannot really cover every single situation that may happen in a household, okay? But what we are talking here, principles, to understand that there is not only physical space, but also there is a psychological space that we need to pay attention to. It may be more important sometimes than the physical space itself. So how our kids, okay, we help them, okay, to really like affirm themselves, okay, by helping them to meet their psychological needs. You see what I mean? And there are really good examples in history where people were driven into suicide just by causing their self-esteem to go down. You are
That's
aware?
what's happening now. That's bullying.
But you know that about it's very well known. I mean, incident during the Korean War, and the POWs, they committed suicide although they were given everything. I mean, and they never like deprived them of food or water or anything. But the only thing they were bringing them bad news. The traitors were basically given more, but those who were really like every day they bombard them with, oh, you lost this place, you lost this battle, you lost, I mean, over and over and over again. They felt they mean nothing. You see what they committed suicide? They describe high level of suicide among them, although physically they were fed. You see what I'm... So, no question, okay, that, I mean, and this has to be taken care of, not at the time of the crisis, but we're talking prevention here, okay, from the beginning, okay, how to create, okay, that psychological space, safe psychological space, for our own kids to affirm themselves, okay. Again, affirmation is a positive thing. Is a positive thing where you can really express that to yourself before anybody else. Later, you can assert that, okay, express it, okay, it's very important also. But at least let us take care of, if that stage is not taken care of, you cannot move into the next one. In other words, this is something that we need to pay attention to it in our curricula.
That's what I was about to say, that till we are not educated ourselves and we are not aware to the level how to handle the situation, we must ourselves realize that the situation needs some help.
Yes.
And if we can help our children, let's get the professional help so that we can give them on a timely manner so that they could be rescued from that.
Yes.
If we don't know ourselves, then how could we help them?
I mean, let us be honest. These advances in psychology, human development, and sociology, anthropology, human geography, I mean, they are not there. I mean, like to apply to only to certain group of people, but they can help us to ask the reference questions at a higher level of understanding. And then Quran is generous, it will give you back. But if I continue to ask the same question about, okay, it's about household, how you can go and say salam before you and take a permission, that's fine. But it is really more than that. And we need to expand, okay, infer from it more than just the physical, but also to pay attention to the psychological. And remember, the psychological was taken care of in a previous Surah Al-Ahzab, when the people come to the Prophet's house, and he would feel embarrassed to ask them to leave. He did not tell anybody about it. Only Quran uncovered that psychological status that the Prophet was in. And Quran said, Wallahu la yastahi min al-haq. Don't be embarrassed about saying something, saying the truth. These people are infringing on your privacy and in a very sensitive time, okay? They have to understand where are the boundaries, okay? And the physical boundary, which is the curtain, al-hijab, okay, was meant really like for people to understand that there is really demarcation between what is private and what is really public. Not to infringe, okay, on the privacy of people, okay, but and it became a symbol. But it doesn't have to be a curtain, can be anything, okay, to basically for these boundaries to be negotiated. Make sense? I think it's, although we are spending time on this, but I think it is really, really very important. Next time, inshallah, we'll talk about another measure, okay, how, people should really address, okay, what, and what are really and what way men and women should really dress, okay, in order really to prevent these problems and maintain the cleanliness of the community. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much.